What if I told you that the greatest mystery of the ancient world isn't hidden in a lost city or buried under the ocean or locked inside some forbidden book, but standing in the open, under the sky, where millions of people have already looked at it, photographed it, even touched it, and still walked away without realizing what they were truly staring at? Because there are places on Earth that feel like they do not belong to humans. Places that seem too old, too precise, too heavy, as if they were built for a world that had different laws of physics. And today we are stepping into two of those places. Two monuments that refuse to be explained. Two structures built thousands of years ago, without cranes, without engines, without steel, without computers. And yet when modern engineers, historians, and scientists look at them, their faces change, because deep down, every serious expert knows one terrifying truth. We still don't fully understand how these monuments were built. And maybe the scariest part isn't what we know. The scariest part is what we don't know. So let me ask you something. When you look at the Great Pyramid of Giza, do you see an ancient tomb, or do you see a machine disguised as a monument? When you look at Stonehenge, do you see a circle of rocks, or do you see a calendar older than written history? A ritual device that tracked the heavens with terrifying accuracy? Because here is the real question. How can two ancient civilizations, separated by thousands of miles, different climates, different cultures, different beliefs, both create structures that still confuse us today? Was it coincidence? Was it intelligence? Or was it something darker? Something we lost. Now imagine standing in Egypt. The desert air is hot, dry, silent, and in front of you rises the Great Pyramid. Not as a building, but as a giant, absolute shape. A geometric mountain made by human hands. You stare upward. You feel small. And the first question hits you like a punch. Who gave the order to build something like this? And why would anyone obey? Because this isn't just construction. This is obsession. This is a civilization spending decades, perhaps generations, moving stones heavier than cars, across sand, under the sun, only to stack them into a perfect triangle, a triangle that points directly toward the sky. So the next question becomes even worse. How do you convince tens of thousands of people to dedicate their lives to one structure, unless they believed it was more than a tomb? Was it fear? Was it religion? Was it control? Or did the Egyptians truly believe this pyramid was a doorway, a staircase, a bridge between Earth and the stars? And then comes the most dangerous question of all. If this was only a tomb, why does it contain hidden chambers, strange shafts, perfect alignments? Why does it feel like it was designed with intelligence beyond survival? Now suddenly the scene shifts. We leave the desert. We travel to England, to a green, cold plain, and there in the mist stands Stonehenge. Not tall like Giza, not massive like a mountain, but somehow more unsettling, because Stonehenge does not show off its power. Stonehenge hides it. It's quiet, it's humble, but it feels like someone arranged it with purpose, a purpose that was never meant for casual eyes. And here you begin asking questions that hurt your brain. Why would ancient people carry stones weighing 20 to 25 tons, not for 10 meters, not for 1 kilometer, but for tens of kilometers? And then you learn that some of Stonehenge's stones were dragged from Wales, over 200 kilometers away. 200 kilometers, without trucks, without metal machines, without modern roads. So let me ask you, what kind of belief is powerful enough to make humans move mountains? What kind of ritual is so important that people would suffer, bleed, and perhaps die just to place stones in a circle? And why a circle? Why not a temple? Why not a palace? Why not walls? Why this silent ring of stone? Like a clock, like a ritual weapon, like a portal? And now, the comparison begins. Because Giza and Stonehenge are not just monuments. They are questions carved into the earth. Giza asks, can humans build something perfect enough to touch eternity? Stonehenge asks, can humans control time itself by understanding the sky, and suddenly you realize something frightening. These structures weren't built by primitive people. They were built by people who understood mathematics, understood measurement, understood astronomy, understood organization, people who understood power. So here's what I want you to think about. What if ancient humans were not less intelligent than us, but intelligent in a different way? What if they didn't build for comfort, but built for immortality? What if the pyramids and Stonehenge are not symbols, but technologies? Not technology like computers, but technology like controlling the minds of people, like controlling society, like controlling belief, like controlling the future. Because when you really look at the Great Pyramid, the numbers become insane. Over 2 million stone blocks. Perfect alignment to true north. Precision that should not exist in the ancient world. And then Stonehenge, aligned with the solstice sun, as if the builders knew the exact day the heavens would shift. So the next question is unavoidable. How did they measure this? How did they cut stone so accurately? How did they lift stone so heavy? How did they transport them across impossible distances? And the simplest answer feels too weak, because just ropes and wood doesn't satisfy the scale, which leads us to the most chilling possibility. What if the real difference between Giza and Stonehenge is not intelligence, but intention? Giza was built to control death. Stonehenge was built to control time. One monument belongs to the desert, the kingdom of the dead. The other belongs to the sky, the kingdom of the sun. So now we stand at the edge of the mystery and ask, which one proves a more advanced civilization? The one that built a stone mountain so perfect it still stands after 4,600 years, or the one that built a cosmic clock so mysterious we still argue about its purpose? And here's the biggest twist. Maybe one of them wasn't meant to be understood at all. Maybe these monuments were never made for tourists, never made for historians, never made for us. Maybe they were built as messages, messages for the future, messages saying, we were here, we knew the sky, and you forgot. So tonight we're doing something most historians refuse to do. We're putting them face to face. Giza pyramids versus Stonehenge, not as tourist attractions, not as ancient ruins, but as proof of something far bigger. Because after you finish this video, you might never look at human history the same way again. And you might start asking the most dangerous question of all. What else did the ancient world know that we still refuse to admit? Before the pyramids, before the desert had kings carved into stone, before the world even understood what monument truly meant, there was only one human fear that never changed: death. And this is where the pyramid story really begins. Not with stones, not with engineering, not even with Egypt, but with one haunting question that every civilization eventually faces. How do you defeat time? How do you stop a body from disappearing into dust? How do you protect a king in the afterlife when thieves, sand, and centuries destroy everything? And if your ruler is believed to be half human and half divine, then what happens if his body is lost? Because to ancient Egyptians, the body wasn't just flesh, it was a key. It was a bridge between this world and the next. So if the king's body was destroyed, then the king's spirit could be trapped forever. That means the pyramid was not originally a building, it was a solution, a weapon against death. 1. The first step: simple graves in the sand. At first, Egyptians buried people in shallow pits in the desert. The sand did something surprising. It dried the bodies naturally, preserving them. But as society grew, problems grew. Wealth created jealousy, power created enemies, and suddenly graves became targets. So the Egyptians began building something stronger over the tombs: mastabas. A mastaba was like a flat, rectangular bench made of mud brick and stone. Simple but revolutionary. It created a permanent marker, a protected space, a message that said, someone important is buried here. But that created a new danger. If people knew where the king was buried, they would also know where the treasure was buried. So the Egyptians were forced to go further. And that's where history takes a sharp turn. 2. The birth of the pyramid, Djoser's impossible idea. Around 2600 BCE, a pharaoh named Djoser ruled Egypt, and he had an architect whose name would echo through time, Imhotep. Some call him the first architect in history, but really, he was a visionary who dared to do something no one had done before. Instead of a single mastaba, he stacked mastabas on top of each other, bigger, higher, layer after layer, until it formed a staircase to the sky. This became the step pyramid of Saqqara. And it wasn't just a tomb, it was a declaration of power, a structure screaming, "We are no longer humans building graves. We are gods building eternity." But one question remained. If they could build a step pyramid, could they build a perfect one? 3. The failed pyramids that created a miracle. Here's the part most people don't know. The Great Pyramid wasn't the first successful pyramid. It was the final result of painful experiments, failure, and engineering evolution. A pharaoh named Sneferu became obsessed with perfection. He built pyramids again and again, and some of them almost collapsed. One of them changed angle halfway up, like it panicked. That is why we call it today the bent pyramid. It looks strange because the engineers realized something terrifying mid-construction. If we keep going like this, it will fall. So they adjusted the angle to survive. Think about that. Imagine building a monument meant to last forever, and realizing halfway that you might be creating a disaster. But the Egyptians didn't quit. They learned. They improved measurements, stone cutting, weight distribution, stability. And then they finally achieved what seemed impossible: a pyramid with perfect sides, perfect symmetry, a shape that looked like it was designed by mathematics itself. This was the Red Pyramid, the first true smooth pyramid, and it opened the door to the greatest leap in ancient construction. 4. Giza. The pyramid becomes a symbol of a civilization. After this evolution, after all these trials, Egypt reached its peak, and then Pharaoh Khufu ordered the creation of something that would not just be a tomb, but a cosmic signature, the Great Pyramid of Giza. And now you must ask, how did they move 2.3 million blocks of stone without machines? How did they align it almost perfectly to true north? How did they create a structure so precise that modern engineers still debate its methods? Because by the time the Great Pyramid was built, pyramids were no longer just tombs. They were proof. Proof that Egypt had mastered organization, labor, mathematics, astronomy, and psychological control. Because only one kind of society can build a pyramid, a society where thousands obey one vision, where belief is so strong, people will spend their entire lives building a monument they will never enter. Conclusion: what pyramids really were. So, pyramids did not appear overnight. They evolved, from sand pits, to mastabas, to stairways, to experiments, until finally the pyramid became the ultimate human message. We refuse to be forgotten. And maybe that's why pyramids still terrify us. Not because they are big, but because they prove something about the ancient world. They weren't primitive. They weren't clueless. They were builders of eternity. And the question we are left with is simple. If they could build this 4,600 years ago, what else were they capable of? Before Stonehenge, before the stones became a symbol of England, before tourists, drones, and documentaries, there was only a cold green plain and a people that left no books, no kings' names, no written plans. Only one terrifying message carved into the landscape. We knew the sky. And that is why Stonehenge is not just a monument. It is a question so stubborn, so ancient, that even modern science still argues about it. Who built Stonehenge? And why would they move mountains just to place stones in a circle? Because that is what Stonehenge truly is. Not a wall, not a palace, not a fortress, not a tomb of gold. A circle, silent, empty. And yet, it has survived thousands of years as if the builders wanted it to outlive memory itself. So let's rewind time. Most people imagine Stonehenge appearing suddenly, a perfect ring of giant stones. But the truth is more disturbing. Stonehenge was not created in one moment. It was created in stages, over centuries, maybe even over 1,000 years. The earliest stage began around 3000 BCE. And here's the shock. It wasn't built with stones at first. It began as an earthwork, a circular ditch and bank, a simple shape. But why would ancient people dig a perfect circle in the ground? Was it a boundary, a sacred line, a place where only chosen people could enter? And if so, what were they doing inside it? Let me ask you something. When humans want to build something powerful, they build it tall. When they want to defend something, they build walls. When they want to rule, they build palaces. So why did these people build a circle? Because circles mean something. A circle has no beginning and no end. It is eternal. It is the shape of the sun, the moon, the stars, the seasons. A circle is time itself. So here comes the first big theory. Stonehenge may have been built not as architecture, but as a calendar, a way to understand the sky, to predict the sun's return, to know when winter would end, to know when crops should be planted. Because if you control the calendar, you control survival. And whoever controls survival becomes sacred. Now we reach the part that makes engineers uncomfortable. Stonehenge's most famous stones weren't local. Some of them, the blue stones, came from Wales, over 200 kilometers away. 200 kilometers, through forests, over hills, across rivers, in a prehistoric world. No trucks, no iron chains, no cranes. So the question becomes insane. How does a society that doesn't even have written language move 4-ton stones across a country? Did they roll them on logs? Did they drag them on sledges? Did they use boats? Or did they know a method we lost? And why choose these stones? Why not use easier ones nearby? Unless these stones were special, unless the stones were believed to have power, some legends even suggest they were healing stones. And if that's true, Stonehenge was not just built, it was chosen, stone by stone, like a ritual. So what is Stonehenge? A calendar? A temple? A burial site? A healing ground? A ritual machine? Maybe it was all of them. Maybe Stonehenge was built to prove something, that the sky can be understood, that seasons can be predicted, that life can be controlled, and in the ancient world, that knowledge was divine power. Which brings us to the final question. After thousands of years, after endless theories, after all our modern technology, why does Stonehenge still refuse to fully explain itself? Maybe because the builders didn't want it explained. Maybe they wanted it felt, like a message. We were here, and we knew the heavens. And even now, the stones still stand, silent, waiting, while the sun rises exactly where it was meant to rise.